All right, Patrick, next topic, we're going to talk about population swings. Now, we actually have some really great charts here to show. One of them is how Canada's population has grown. That should be no surprise to people, by the way. If somebody's like, oh my gosh, Canada's population's growing, we've been talking about this, screaming this from the rooftops for several years now on how much Canada's population has been growing. And Patrick, this is just accelerating. Now, I do got to say, you're usually the doom and gloomer, and you're usually the one, talking about warnings. But I got to say, and I sometimes give the warnings too. You're much more the warning guy. But anyways, I will say this. I gave two warnings over the last several years. One of them when the market was really, really ramping up. And I said to people, be very careful. You said the same thing, Patrick. And we told people, and I remember being on record saying, I would rather not see price appreciation of 10, 15, 20% per year. I want to see 3, 4, 5% steady as she go. That's better for us real estate investors compared to what's happened, which is prices going absolutely up and then crashing down and creating this market chaos, which if you're an advanced real estate investor, you can take advantage of that chaos. But the point still is there's still pain around that chaos. I'm starting to get concerned about this, Patrick, because these friggin' numbers are accelerating. It seems like quarter over quarter, they're accelerating like crazy. And what's going to happen is this is going to now fall off a cliff. Anytime something goes up dramatically, it falls off a cliff dramatically, and that just creates market chaos. And I see that happening in this sector. And I'm not talking about, and I know there's lots of conversation around our healthcare system and whether it can handle, and that's not even what I'm talking about. I get those concerns and I understand that. I'm just talking about the fact that when they stop this train, it is going to create market chaos because we will have geared up for this incredible growth in population. And it will eventually, when there's a change in government, this is going to change on a dime. That's my view.
Well, I think there's a couple things, to your point. So first off, it's politics over policy. So will it fall off a cliff? They'll start to back off. I think the pressure is getting very, very high. Does it have an effect on our healthcare system and our infrastructure system and our housing? All of it, not will it, it is. It's actually crippling it in some cities. You're hearing a lot about it, particularly within the healthcare system, which is challenging to begin with. Forget about all the people that are moving into it and wanting to use the system. Now, having said all of that, we see this politics over policy. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. There's enough complaining and bitching that yes, I think the politicians are going to make some kind of a move to slow things down or at least manage it better. But here's the other side of this coin that nobody has, well, they're just starting to talk about it. I'm actually going to do, I think, a standalone segment on this and that is the other side of the coin, which is a lot of this immigration, JG, is necessary because they're offsetting the other side, which is people are coming and now they're going. Now, the retention of people in Canada was quite long, like it extended. So I came to Canada, I lived in Canada for 10 years, I made some money, I made a living, I got training, and then I moved on. What's happening is in some cases that retention is slowing down. Why? Or getting shorter. And the reason is because they get here on what they're now calling false promises and false hopes. And they get here, they can't find a place to live, they can't find a job, they're running into challenges. And, it's no joke that there are literally very educated people, whether it be doctors or engineers or architects, that are coming over from these other countries, and they're literally working in menial service jobs or Uber. They're trying to make ends meet, and they can't afford to stay here, so they're actually having to leave. So there is an interesting offset that is starting to percolate. We're starting to hear about it. There's starting to be some data show up for it. So it's an interesting time we need people because, of course, our birth rate is almost negative.
What?
And so in terms of just citizens of the country, now we have to have that immigration. And now a lot of it is I got to put a lot of people in the pipe because we're also losing them at the other end. So that's going to be a segment.
Now, this impacts real estate, though. For everyone listening, there's an impact to real estate here, which is for two things. Number one is obviously people get into the country. But once they come into the country, they then go to other places. And Patrick, this chart shows how many people have come into the country. This shows Canada's population grew by nearly 360,000 people, or 0.9%. in the third quarter alone. That's a record in the last 50 years, by the way, largest we've ever seen in the last 50 years. But then the question becomes, where do they go after that? Many of the people come into Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver are the three largest ports, and then from there they then move on to other places in the country. And we're seeing this, Patrick. We're seeing that search for affordability. This was a prediction you made, Patrick, and you were bang on this affordability. That's for sure. I got to give you kudos for that. Let me give you a thumbs up. In fact, a thumbs up may not be enough. That was such a good prediction, Patrick. I'm going to give you the old fireworks on this one. All right, because you were that bang on. So good job.
Mm-hmm. Good job. That, I think to me that was so obvious, and it continues to be interesting with the doom and gloomers out there talking about this is not sustainable in Calgary, and they've got no economic data to back it up. They're talking about, well, prices and this, and I'm going, listen, give me, we have to look at what's happening in the province, and people are moving into it. Economically, they're still remaining strong. The affordability means people can spend money. Go back to what I said earlier, JG, is that we as a country are not particularly productive. But when you get into the province of Alberta, smaller provinces of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, for example, you start to see higher productivity. It's all to say this, is that the jobs continue to be happening in Alberta. There still continues to be a lower cost of living, significant lower cost of living. And I'm talking about food and fuel and housing aside. So the point is their incomes are higher, their job market is stronger, there's still strong industry. Alberta will be a standout province in terms of GDP for 2024. I mean, of course, given wars and given all the possibilities of black swan events, that would be, that kind of, okay, we got to pay attention to that over there. But ultimately, Alberta is going to continue to be strong. And I can't say enough. There is political leadership is very strong in Alberta. Certainly, Danielle Smith has done some really great stuff, and her and Premier of Saskatchewan, now they're teaming up, and they're really pushing back hard on the feds, which is only going to attract more people into that province and gain strength. So lots going on in Alberta that makes it very, very positive.
Here's a great slide, Patrick, showing people that the amount of people moving into the province of Alberta, which, as you said, is quite a bit. Is actually is a record, I believe, for Alberta. Yeah. It has been since 1991. This is the highest annual growth rate since 1981 coming into Alberta. And I think just one caveat to this, I just want the producers to put on here, sponsored by Mr. Alberta, Patrick Francie himself. But anyways, apart from that, I totally agree with you, Patrick. And in fact, the real estate investments that I personally have in Alberta, all of them have gone better than expected, because there's just a lot of energy in Alberta right now. And I would say my hibernation comment that I made at the beginning, the first segment of the show, that's not applying as much to Alberta. People in Alberta are excited. The government's actually coming out and showing people what they're going to do and how they're going to transition, and how they're going to work with the new world as it comes out. Lots of debate about that, but the point is that there's just a lot of energy, and it's all going in the right direction. So my hat's off to Albertans who are really kind of going in the right direction. By the way, Patrick, you're from British Columbia now, so you don't count as an Albertan anymore, just so you know.
No, that's not true.
Albertans, regular Albertans.
I am truly bi-provincials. I've got businesses in Alberta. I got secondary residence in Alberta. I am bi-provincial all day long. That's why I can speak to it. Now, I want to just caution people around all of this. We see a lot of out-of-province investors going into Alberta, and they're coming from a place of, well, this is what worked in Ontario. So I'm going to use the example of, somebody in Toronto is looking at a condo in Calgary for $300,000, and they're going, gosh, I'll take 6, relative to what you would have to spend in Toronto. It's just not the same. So cautionary note.
Or in BC, you often blame on or BC, yeah.
Or BC. No, that's 100% true. You look at what's happening in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, and these prices are so high that it makes everything look almost free in Alberta. But I'm just going to say, it's our responsibility, I think, to be cautionary and give people a heads up. It's not the same. It's not the same culturally. You have to buy for cash flow. You have to use the kind of strategies that we teach, and to make sure that you are making sound investment decisions and not just throwing money up against the wall to see what sticks.
Population swings definitely impacting our market, folks. Keep a close eye on it. And I have a lot of real estate investor friends that have moved out. Atlantic Canada is the same thing, Patrick. I remember us, and we should pull this back. We both said this. We were both accurate, by the way, may I add. But, Atlantic Canada had a huge boom during COVID. And we said people have to be a little bit careful. Don't just go anywhere in Atlantic Canada. Make sure it's backed by economic fundamentals. The good markets have continued to grow and continue to show positive signs. Some of those tertiary, Atlantic Canada markets where 126 people live and that's it, they've come off a long way. So I think that's part of that cautionary tale you're talking about, Patrick.
It is, and something it's interesting about what's happening in the East, and we don't have a slide for it, and so my memory's a little bit vague, but I think the federal and provincial government has said we're going to build 40,000 homes, and I want to say Halifax, I don't remember. Anyways, the point is, let's say East, and they want to do that by 2028, 5 years, an additional 40,000 homes. And I just, that sounds really good, by the way. That will never happen. And so let's put that one on record. And I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't think I will be, unless they create a manufacturing facility and do manufactured home, mass produce. We've had that conversation. Mass produce homes, they might be able to pull it off. They're not going to pull it off. So again, politics over policy sounds good, but be very cautious about what they actually can pull off. If you like what you learned here, go to the description below and subscribe for our free Insiders newsletter, where you can also stay up to date for our upcoming events and our courses.
If you want to see more stuff like this, click here. If you want to see the entire show, click there.